And what I bought to do this job is, it's a Quicksilver, and it's the full cable kit. It looks like 865 436 A03, which is the complete kit that's got the gaskets for the Outdrive, gaskets and seals, and a new cable, new core. I say all the seals are in the plastic bag, a new boot, all the pieces, including the end, which on the other one was staked together. This one is not, so I can adjust it to the right length. And one thing that's really tough, we'll see how this works, but when I've done this before now, and when you go back together, the hole in the end of the boot is 1/4 inch or maybe a little less, and it's a tight squeeze in there, and this is the piece is maybe 3/8 here, and you got to try to figure out how to get that boot to go over that piece of 3/8, because the hole's a lot smaller and it doesn't want to expand. Mercury sells a tool for this, and I should have bought it, but I forgot that I needed it till I got here. It's about a $50 tool, but in the meantime, since I don't have other choices, what I did was I took the old, I'm never going to put the old cable back in, so I took this old one, I took the old one of these and cut it off about like that, right? So I cut it off about, you know, 1.25 inches or so off the end. This was soft enough to cut with a hacksaw. And then I took a bench grinder and I just beveled the end a little bit so that it's smooth. Got the bores, and then as I've been playing around with my fishing line, I got a drill and I drilled a, what was that? I forget. I want to say 3/32 or so. I don't know. I drilled a small hole in the side that I can use to, because this is hollow, I can use that and tie my fishing line to it. But my thought is, and I've not done this before, this will be a first, but my thought is that I'm going to thread this one in there, which will get me started, and then I'm going to take some, there's a couple of ways I could do it, but I'm going to start with some electrical tape, and I'm going to try to put some wraps of electrical tape on here to give it a little bit of a ramp so that it's not hitting the square corner. The picture I've seen of the Mercury tool is one that comes up against, and it's got a ramp so you can just push it through. I say I don't have that, so, but when I did this on my other boat last year, it was really tough, because that boot doesn't want to expand to go over here. It was not a lot of fun. So, and being that you can't get your fingers, although, you know, the opening is very small, to get your hands in and figure out how to push this together. So that's my plan. We'll see how it works. But I've got the full kit, replacing the cable and everything. All right. So now the new Bellows is in with some Bellows adhesive on it. The clamp is torqued down. I ended up using, well, I used a screwdriver style first, but I'm driving the socket with a universal joint 1/4 inch drive, and then using a ratchet to get it snugged down. I've got my braided fishing line run through here, and I'm going to get it attached to the cable, and then feed the cable through there, feed the cable through the boot and into the boat. And so here's my new cable with my little adapter and electrical tape on the end and my fish line. Frankly, I don't know that the fish line is absolutely necessary, but I've just it's really hard to get your hand, you can't get your hand down in there. You got to use a gripper tool or something to guide this around the rear engine mount. And so this is kind of like insurance that I can grab it. I may be going through all this. I used this the last time and it sort of half worked, but it can get stuck inside here. So I'm going to try a little different technique this time. I'm going to hang a weight on the line where it comes out of the boat to keep some tension on it while I'm feeding it in, just so that it can't get loose and get wrapped around something and get stuck. But at this point, there's a hole in the back of the drive here, in the back of the bell housing, and so I'm going to feed this in, and then I'm going to grease it really well and feed it through here and into the back of the boat, and then try to use the line to help me feed it around that rear engine mount and above the starter motor. And as I said, I could probably get in there with one of my long gripper tools and pull it. Extra thing I try to do. It's not in the book for sure, and usually that's my go-to. Well, scratch the fishing line idea. It's no longer connected. I said I was going to hang a weight on it. I hung a wrench on the end of it, and it was a little too heavy, and it snapped the line and pulled it through, and okay. So now I'm going to try to feed it through, and two things. One, use the natural curve to get it to turn, because it's not straight. And then use one of these gripper tools if I need to guide it. It's just, on this boat, it's very, very hard to get down, and like others, it's hard to get down into the back of the engine compartment and get down there, and the clearance is real tight. But so be it. Here goes. So I got some 2,4-C, some good old mercury grease here. See if we can stuff a little bit in the end. See if we can lube up the end here. You need to have some grease to slide it, but then you don't want a whole lot of grease on the outside or you can't grip it with your fingers. And I don't want to tear the new boot going together, so let's be careful here, Dan. I got it started, but it didn't want to go the rest of the way, so. And this is tough, but it's working. I just have to push it while rotating the cable a little bit back and forth to get it to scoot. I've got it almost all the way in. Well, not quite, but it's getting there. Now I can push it straight. It's going. Just don't want to tear up the new boot. It's pretty doggone flexible. But it's got limits, you know. There it goes. Okay, now it's on the cable. Now I'm going to flip it around so the curve goes the other way. Well, now that I've got it started, I need to be able to get things lined up. So I'm going to put a little grease on the cable back here. A little more. And then I'm going to steer it straight so that it goes in the engine. Well, now I need to get it through the grommet in the transom, which it's arguing with me. I don't know whether it's high or low. Well, I finally got the shift cable routed into the engine compartment, up to the engine. Just for reference, you know, this boat has doesn't have good clearance. All you have is a hatch to reach down through, so it's very hard to get down in. And here's the cable. You can see I've got it routed through, and it's now tightened down in the back with the socket. But I spent 3 or 4 hours working to get that cable through there. It's really tough. And tougher than, you know, my V8 boat that I did the video last year is sitting, you know, 6 feet over to my left, and it was a whole lot easier to do. You know, I got that one through much easier. And so I was trying to figure out why, but a couple of things. One is, you know, this engine has, you know, right there in the center, there's a hose. This lower one down here is the power steering hose. There are wiring harnesses. So back here by the exhaust, let me use a pointer here. So that's power steering. That's water. There's wiring harness underneath. And where you'd really like to reach in is right about through that hose to reach down to try to route this cable. But you can't, and I can't get my head down there to see very well. I mean, I stuck my head down through this hatch, but it's hard. I tried to get through the hatch, but it's almost impossible. There's no way that I couldn't get down on my knees and get in there. I can get through the hatch. I'm small enough to get through, but that's about it. So I wouldn't have gotten this done without my little borescope depth tech camera. And I also took this power steering hose. It's got a tie wrap. Normally it tie wraps to this hose. I broke the tie wrap to get it out of the way. And then there are two ventilation ducts that were obstructing, and I moved those too. So here's kind of a cartoon. Here's the back of the boat, the transom. Here's the back of the engine. This is the exhaust system. It kind of comes out in a Y, and when it gets around underneath here, it comes up. And then the starter motor's about right there. Where you want the cable to be is you want it to come through here and turn and be on the outside of that engine mount bolt and come through here and then up and around. What happens is, though, is you come straight in. When you push the cable in, there's nothing to make it turn. So it wants to come straight and be on the inside, and it hits the back of the engine, the flywheel cover, whatever is back there, and it just stops. It's laying on top of the exhaust, and it's underneath the mount, but it's on the back side of the bolt for the mount. And on this engine, with all the cables, I haven't figured out, I'm sure you can do it, but I haven't figured out how to reach that bolt to take it out. In my old boat, I was able to catch this with one of the, you know, with a long gripper tool, with one of these guys that, you know, where you capture the cable and pull. And sometimes I use a hooked wire, but I was able to catch that and pull it over to this side of the bolt and bring it through. On this boat, with all the plumbing in the way, you can't see it. So I had to use my camera, you know, borescope style camera, cable camera, to get down in there and guide me. And I spent hours trying to snag the cable and bring it on this side of the bolt. And I couldn't. There's enough clearance to get it underneath, but your access is up this way. So when if you grab a hold of it and hook onto the cable, you want to pull it sideways, but you're pulling it up at the same time, and it doesn't want to clear. And then the new cable, this is the old cable. The new cable, the brass end is longer. It's about almost double, not quite. It's about that long. Plus, I had about an inch of threaded, you know, rod in the end as a guide to get it through. To get it through the bellows, which worked pretty well actually. What I tried to do was back the cable out. I had some help. Back the cable out till the nose of that was over here, and then pull it sideways. But it was too stiff. By the time you got an inch of that, you got the brass, you were back to where there was only about an inch of of active cable, and that cable is so stiff that I couldn't bend it and flex it and move it over. I had a piece of number 12 copper wire, solid, with a hook on the end, and I could have maybe found steel wire coat hanger, something stronger. I do sort of like to have something that if I got stuck I could pull and get the hook out of it. I've had a couple times where you get something stuck because the hook gets on around something and you can't get it back out. So the copper seemed to work pretty good, but it kept slipping off. I couldn't get enough bite on it. What I'm trying to show here in the picture, what I ended up doing was it came all the way up to the end, but it was so stiff I didn't think I could turn it and get it around this bolt. In the end, my wife was helping. I had her push, and I had my hook on the end, and I managed to pull it this way while she kept pushing, and we got the cable to kind of flex this way, and I managed to get it around and pull it out. But then the cable was on the back side of this bolt. Well, once it was there, once I went back and screwed it in so it couldn't back off, I was able to push the cable down and then snag it again and sneak it underneath that bolt and bring it over here where it belongs. If you leave it over here, it's liable to hit the coupler or the shaft, and they want it under the mount and coming out the other side of that bolt. Anyway, that's kind of a long explanation, but let me show you where I'm at here. So I have this little camera, and I mean, you can get different ones, but I was able to sneak that in over the starter motor. See back there, and it kind of goes in this gap. So if I run this along with the starter motor, see, there's the cable, and there's the mount, there's the bolt for the mount. So the engine's on the right hand side, the transom's on the left, and I now have the cable on the outside, starboard side, transom side, coming out above the starter bell and above the exhaust. And you can see there's the exhaust system there. And frankly, without this little camera, I don't know that I would have ever gotten that, because I needed to be able to see how to sneak a wire in there and hook onto that cable and move it. Here you can see, I was talking about how much more brass. See, there's the end of the cable. You can see my little screwed in piece on the end, which actually was starting to come unscrewed. And then the brass used to end about right here, and they've added about 1.5 inches or so of brass to the end of it. Don't know why, it's just the way they did it. And what I'm going to do now is take that piece out of the end, and I'm going to run the core wire through. And so here are a few shots from the camera from in the back. That bolt is the transom, through the transom bolt from the lower left side of the stern drive, and the cable is off there to the right. The exhaust is on the left hand side, and you can see the brass there to the right that is the cable protruding through the stern drive. Now there it is, laying right on the exhaust system, and I'm trying to reach there. There's a wire there on the left hand side. I'm trying to snag it and not having such good luck. So here's the bolt on the engine mount, and I've got my gripper tool there trying to pull it around the corner, and not having much success. Just another view of it where I've got the wire trying to grab that cable. I have it backed up, and I'm trying to get it around the back side of that engine mount bolt. And again, not successfully. But it kind of gives you an idea what you're up against. Then here you can see my wire again hooking over that cable, and I can get it to move. That's the bolt I'm trying to get it underneath. Just can't quite make it. So here it is, kind of from a different angle with my. This was a car trim tool, and I'm trying to again drag it from over from the side. Now here's actually where you can see where the cable actually is finally in where it belongs. Right there, it's on the left hand or transom side of the bolt. Okay, so now that I have the cable installed all the way through, and I'm leaving it laying as straight as possible because now I got to put the core wire in, and my experience is it's easier to do that when the cable's not all running its final route, and the straighter it is, the easier it is. I used my special socket for doing this, and torqued that down. And following the book, the specification is to, one, put what they call perfect seal on it, and Mercury's gotten rid of perfect seal, and frankly the dealer, one of the Mercury dealers, sold me a bottle of this 10 years ago. I was looking for official perfect seal, and he said, use this aviation forma gasket sealant, because it's essentially the same thing. And today, if you go try to buy perfect seal and you go through the parts catalog, this is what Mercury is selling for that purpose. It's got a brush bottle in it. Anyway, they want perfect seal on the threads of that nut, and then you turn it, you crank it in all the tight, cinch it down, and they want they don't have a torque spec, it's make it tight with no more than 2 threads showing. So you kind of, it's hard to tell, but you kind of got to look at the nut and say, hey, you know, how close am I to the bottom? And you know, mine, I think I probably got about 1 thread short of being bottomed right now. So then I can put the core wire in. I have not put the clamp on the bellows yet. I kind of want to do is get this all together and make sure I don't have to take anything back apart. And then once I do that, then I'm going to go in and put the clamp on the bellows. So here's the core wire. And then it has to go through the shift slide. And the shift slide ultimately it connects that lever. And so we got the end here. It's got to go through the shift slide all the way. And if you don't put it in here first, you'll never get the shift slide installed. And it has a set screw, and there's again, I'm going to not install this all the way quite yet, but I'm going to spin it down till it's almost tight. And then there will be I got to come back and install some safety wire, but again, I'm going to wait until I get it all installed. But having it installed with the nut on it gives you a handle to push. So let's see if we can get this guy through there. Yeah, right. Come on. Let's see if it goes easier with the drive straight. Because this metal end has to go around all the bends. And that can be fun, so to speak. Let's see if that'll get it around. Oh, come on. Well, this was a really tough go too. There was a spot, you know, it probably only had a foot of it in there where it didn't want to bend. You know, I just said that I worked real hard to get the cable moved over. It might have been better to leave it straight and put the core wire in and then move it over. It's really, you got to have some really strong fingers because you don't want to kink this or you ruin it. You know, if you use tools on it, you could scar it up and mess it up. So you got to have some really strong grip and just keep pushing it. And then once it got through there, it seems like it's doing okay. And then when you get here to the end, you kind of can push it out. There we go. Okay. And then this guy goes like this and engages that lever. But if you kink that wire, it'll bind up. Now that I got the core wire in, and I did test fit the pieces on the end to make sure that they were good. I always hate to button up until I'm sure the next step is going to work, because you know you don't want to have to take things back apart again. So first thing was I'm also double checking the torque on this clamp. It wasn't quite tight enough. The book says 35 inch-pounds or 4 Newton meters. You have to install the clamp, and the bellows in here is supposed to be 2.5 inches from the inside of the bell housing. So I made out of a paint stick. I've tried to do this before with a ruler, and it's hard. So what I did instead was took a piece of a paint stirring stick and cut it off at exactly 2.5 inches, so I can put it back against the bell housing all the way, and then move the bellows just enough to get it in there. You know, push it up against, use it as a gauge. I also was very careful to make sure that the bellows is all lined up. There are little marks on it. When you start cranking the cable in, you kind of twist the bellows a little bit. So I've wiggled it back and forth until I'm sure that the convolutions are all straight. And then I've got this clamp to put in there. Mercury doesn't sell the tool, but they give you a plan for how to make one of these guys. And in the last video I did for my 98 Chaparral, I talked about this a little bit more, but I had my son-in-law put a nut in there, weld a nut in there, and then I put it on my drill press with put a drill through it per the specs in the service manual. I believe the hole's a 1/2 inch, if I remember right, and then you kind of got to chamfer the edges, but they want you to use that so that when you clamp this clamp down, that you don't squash it or flatten it, that it goes on round. You aren't going to be able to see. I'm going to sneak in there and use my pliers to clamp that on the end of that bellows. Back in a few. So there's the clamp right there. Clamp it down until they come together. Interesting thing in the service manual is that my book says 2.5 inches or 3 millimeters, which is wrong. They don't match. I went back and looked at my book from 1998, and the answer there is 2.5 inches or 63 millimeters, which would be a correct interpretation. So now they want the set screw installed and safety wired, and the kit comes with a piece of safety wire. I haven't done this one before, so this will be fun. They want it to be, and I used a 1/8 of an inch Allen wrench to just make sure it was seated all the way. So it's basically at about horizontal or just a little past horizontal. And the answer is they want you to back it off 1/8 of a turn. Well, a 1/4 turn would be straight up, so 1/8 of a turn's about there. I think they just don't want it clamped tightly. They want it to be able to move. And then they say they want the wire in a figure 8 in the book. When I look at the other one that came from the factory, basically it's a loop, and then they twist it in the middle, and the twisted part goes between, and that's sort of what makes it look like a figure 8. I'm assuming the factory did it right, so the answer may be that I have to do it this way, which is run it through and then use my 1/8 inch Allen wrench to set the position. So we'll put it about halfway through here, and then we'll turn it to about where I wanted the 1/8 of an inch to be, or 1/8 of a turn to be, which is about right there. because I want it to be at that angle. Did I leave enough wire? I think so. So we want to bend it over this way and bend it up this way, like so. So we'll kind of clamp it over here, and then we'll bring it down over the edge and kind of clamp it there. Form it so that it can't move a whole lot. Turn the pieces outward here so that we can twist them. Let's get it about right there. Okay, I want it about there. Rather than a needle nose, let's use a flat one. Seems a little loose yet. Let's see if I can tuck this in a little bit. See, I'm not an expert in safety wire. I've seen it used, but I've not been one that used it much, so I'm learning. Now that's a little looser than we want. I'm going to go back to here. I'm going to just leave that hang there, I think. Gonna twist some more. I just don't want to break the safety wire. Alright, come on. Well, I did a bunch of fussing with it. I got it twisted pretty tight. Got it tucked in the hole. My wish was that I could make that wire tight and not wiggle. But the factory wire, I went and checked, and it's about the same. So, the nuts or the screw is at about 1/8 of a turn loose. I've got wire twisted on there. It's kind of hit its limit. So I think that's good. Every part of this job has been tougher than average for some reason. I'm about ready to put the drive back in. I decided that I would, the book says install the drive and then go in and finish the cable and adjustments. The risk of that is that the shifter, might decide not to stay in forward gear position, which is required for the drive to go in, but I can move that by hand down here, so I'm thinking it's probably okay. When I say it was hard is I've never had a gasket so difficult to get apart and clean up on one of these drives. Maybe I just don't remember well, but this gasket that was on here just tore and dismembered. It was in a million pieces and it was stuck tight, and I had to do a lot of scraping on both sides to get it loose and get all the old gasket off. It took me a couple hours here with a scraper to really get it cleaned up. But anyway, the square cut O-ring is in the bore, and I used a little Bellows adhesive to put it in place. This O-ring is stuck in place with a little bit of, again, Bellows adhesive to make sure that it stays put. Make sure, yeah, it shouldn't be going anywhere. The gasket's in place over the dribble valve there. I've got my little orange tool here. I'll tell you, without one of these, it's a real bear putting this together. I've done it before, but that little orange tool is like $3. It's worth its weight in gold, because otherwise this shift lever wants to turn and fall out of mesh, and it's a real pain. That thing is like a lifesaver. The front shaft, I've replaced the O-rings with the O-rings in the kit, and I've greased everything thoroughly. I cleaned off the old grease on the splines and greased it thoroughly with spline and coupler grease. It's a tube that I have. I think they've replaced that with something they call Extreme, but right now I've got the blue version that I've had a tube of for some time, and so everything is ready. I've got a board underneath here where I where I set the drive originally when I pulled it out, and I got everything set. So I should be able to lift the drive, put the shaft in, and slide it together. Gotta make sure the prop is turned all the way so that it stays in forward gear. Step one is to get it through the gimbal bearing. Like I say, you just want to keep this, keep that shift mechanism pointed correctly into, so that it lines up. And I think it's fallen out of gear because the prop's spinning now. Just slid over a little bit. There it goes. What I wanted to do was turn the prop just a little and turn the spline just a little so it would line up. Make sure that's straight. Well, I'm still having trouble getting the drive all the way in. I was worried about the shift linkage, and I've been underneath there with my little camera, and I have it aligned, and it looks like it's started its way in. The studs are almost through. I'm down to the last 1/2 or 3/4 of an inch. I think we're just about there. Just want to get the nuts enough that it can't back out. Get this hook chunk of wood out of here. Get my fingers out. There we go. I don't know what was holding it. I did put the nuts on just finger tight so they couldn't keep backing off. And I was running with the skeg on a board, so I lifted it up and put a piece of 1x in there and kept wiggling it, and I was gaining like a thread at a time. Just, it was slow. I think just the O-rings going into the coupler, you know, you got to get them compressed and you got to get them in there. Because I was turning the engine with the prop, and it's, you know, the splines were lined up. All right, well, I'm going to grease the studs and put the washers on and run them down. Get my 2,4C here. Run that around with a finger. Well, let me run those bolts down. I'll be back. Alright, so I'm going to crisscross torque these. They're supposed to torque to 50. Now it's time to get these cylinders back in there. I like using the rope and tying them up to the ski thing to hold them up, and so the cables or the hoses don't get all kinked up and stuff. Gotta get the 2,4C out again and grease this guy. This cross shaft should have grease on it. The bushings are there. Now we're going to have to lift this just a little. There we go, like that. And I can slide that through. Slide it back, like so. Like this. And then the ring. Alright, and I'll do the other side. Pop the caps on. And now it'll be time to go inside the boat and connect the linkage and adjust it.